Our next presenter is Luca Demirağ. Luca comes to us from West Hartford, Connecticut, where he is a senior in high school. He tells us he has been a vexillologist since he was 2 years old and a NAVA member since he was 10, having published already 2 articles in Vexillum with another one coming soon. His favorite flag is Kyrgyzstan, the version between 1992 and 2023. Luca, over to you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Luca. As you can see, I am presenting on Diaspora flags, and you can see I have a bunch of them there. Yeah, but first, before I actually present on Diaspora flags, I need to define what is a diaspora. So basically, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it is, well, as you can see here, a group of people who spread from one original country to another countries, or the act of spreading in this way. As you may have guessed, like nations, ethnicities, and cultures usually, as they usually do, diaspora groups commonly have flags. So I am going to give some examples of those, as well as I will talk about the history of some diaspora flags. Or diaspora groups themselves. Uh, as context. It's usually pretty helpful. Yeah. The first one is the Acadian flag, and the Acadians are basically the descendants of French settlers in the maritime provinces of Canada, those being New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia, in the early 17th century, prior to the British colonization of those regions. Eventually, as you know, the British did colonize it, and they wanted the Acadians to sign an oath of unconditional allegiance to the British crown, which they did not do for various reasons. And eventually, after the 7 Years' War, the Acadians were entirely expelled. Some of them went to Louisiana, or New England, I think were the 2 main regions. And those sub-diaspora groups still remain today, and actually, they have their own flags. But I'm not going to be talking about those because, yeah, I'm just going to be talking about the main one. Eventually, the Acadians did return, and in 1884, Marcel Francois Richard designed the flag of the Acadians at the Acadian National Convention in Miscouche, which is in Prince Edward Island. And the flag itself is basically just the French flag with a gold star in the canton. And the reason the gold star exists is for 2 main reasons. One is to symbolize its distinctiveness from mainland French people, like French people from France. There's this distinct subgroup, diaspora group. The other reason is to represent the Acadians' Catholic faith. That's why it's in gold. Yeah. And as you can see, it is widely used by the Acadians. You can also see the Brittany flag up there, because I think a lot of Acadians, or some Acadians, probably have Breton descent as well. And the next one is the Iraqi Turkmen flag, of which there are actually 2. And the Iraqi Turkmens are essentially descendants of Turkic settlers in Mesopotamia or modern Iraq, beginning in the 7th century. During the Ottoman Empire, they were fairly prosperous, the Ottomans being another Turkic people. But after that, they became increasingly persecuted by governments such as the British colonial rule, and eventually leading up to like ISIS and other groups. And as I said, they actually have 2 main flags. The first one is essentially the Turkish flag with sky blue as the main color and the background color instead of red, and 6 stars closing the crescent instead of just one large star just outside it. And the other is essentially the flag of the TRNC with sky blue in place of white and white in place of red. And as for how these flags originated, they, as far as I could find out, which wasn't able to find out that much about them, they both originated from Iraqi Turkmen political parties in the 1990s and 2000s. I think one of them aimed for Iraqi Turkmen self-determination. The other one might have I don't remember for the other one, but they both, I think, did represent the Iraqi Turkmens. And these are the flags. As you can see, they are both used. Now, this one has a lot of history for the actual diaspora group, so just bear with me. The Bosnian Serbs. Serbs in Bosnia, as you may have guessed. So initially, the region of Bosnia was split between Croats and Serbs. Croats being the descendants of South Slavs who were, I mean, they're both descendants of South Slavs, but after the schism in Christianity, Croats were mostly Catholic and Serbs were mostly Eastern Orthodox. And eventually, the Ottoman Empire, and its when it conquered the Balkan region, uh, converted a lot of people in Bosnia to Islam, and um, this also occurred in other regions throughout the Balkans, but most Bosnia was one of the regions where it mainly occurred. Eventually, Austria-Hungary took over Bosnia. By this time, nationalism was developing as a political ideology, and at this time, Bosnian nationalism was mostly promoted by the Austro-Hungarian government because of Serbian irredentism in Bosnia, because there was still a large Serbian and Croatian actually population in Bosnia. And of course, this did not fully work because in 1914, Gavrilo Princip assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand because of with Serbian irredentist motivations, and thus began the First World War. And eventually, after that concluded, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes was formed. And it essentially unified the South Slavic peoples, except for Bulgarians, and the internal divisions of subdivisions. The internal borders of subdivisions uh, shifted within the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes because they are kind of loosely defined. They're not, yeah, they're pretty loosely defined. There's eventually World War II happened, and Croatia became independent as a Nazi puppet state, and it annexed Bosnia and committed genocide against Serbs throughout Croatia, but also in Bosnia. After this, Yugoslavia was formed, and ethnic republics, somewhat similar to those of the USSR, were created. And one of these was the Bosnian. I don't know what they were called exactly, but the Bosnian, I think, Socialist Republic, something like, yeah, something like that. But Bosnian nationalism still was not very prevalent at this time until 1992, the early 1990s, essentially, when Yugoslavia began. Well, the actual fracturing had begun in the 1980s, but countries only began declaring independence in the early 1990s. First Slovenia, and then Croatia, and then Bosnia. Now, the Serbs still made up a very large percentage of the population in Bosnia, and while Serbs wished to remain with Yugoslavia, Bosnians wished to become independent as Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this is where became a Bosniak nationalism began to develop, majorly because before that they were either considered Muslim Croats, Muslim Serbs, or also like well before that, and then in the period between that and this, independent Bosnia and Herzegovina, there was also the ethnic designation Muslims, which some Muslim South Slavs still use this designation, but not many. I think mostly the ones who still use it are found in Montenegro. Um, anyway, the Yugoslav War occurred, and it only, at least in Bosnia, I think it mainly stopped after the Bosnian genocide and the NATO intervention. And then after that, Bosnia and Herzegovina became a federal republic with two sides. Oh yeah, they also the Bosnian Serbs they created a republic within as a kind of break off of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Republika Srpska, or the Serbian Republic. The Bosnia and Herzegovina became a federal republic with one side for the Croats and Bosniaks and one for the Serbs. And the Serbian side was actually still called the Republika Srpska, and you've probably seen the flag. And it still retains the flag of the separatist Republika Srpska. The other side, interestingly enough, the Bosniak and Croat side did have a flag, but it doesn't anymore. So now I have to discuss the Bosnian Serb flag. It is basically just a red, blue, white tricolor. And as you know, this is a common pan-Slavic color, which began with Russia when, when when it became the main banner of Russia or flag of Russia. But yeah, the specifically red, blue, and white is found mostly in Serbian flags. I mean, it's the flag of Serbia with the coat of arms. It was also the flag of the Kingdom of Serbia, the Kingdom of Montenegro, the Serbian Socialist Republic under under Yugoslavia. And yeah, it is that specific order is mostly found in Serbian flags. And as you can see, it is still used. It is probably used actually, I think, more than the flag of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the Republika Srpska side. Next, the Volga Germans. The Empress Catherine II in Russia invited Germans to settle along or Europeans in general, to settle along the Volga River. And it was mostly Germans who actually did this. And that with under the promise that they would be able to maintain their German culture, which eventually was broken in the beginning in the late 1800s with assimilation programs, and eventually this continued essentially the assimilation of the Volga Germans until World War II, when the Volga Germans, due to fears of collaboration with the Nazis, were deported to mostly Siberia and Kazakhstan. Eventually, some of them remained there. Some of them returned to their settlements along the Volga. Some of them went to Germany. Also, I forgot to mention in the late 1800s, when assimilation programs were beginning, a lot of Volga Germans went to the Americas. And the Volga German flag is basically just the flag of Germany with a black shield with a gold outline and a stalk of wheat running through the shield, representing the Volga Germans' agrarian lifestyle. This was the only image I could find of the Volga German flag actually being used. I have confirmed that it does exist using several sources and that it is presumably used. I just couldn't find any photos outside of this random person who bought the flag. So that's all you get. Yeah, this is the last actual diaspora group I have to discuss, is the Latvian Russians, or Russians in Latvia. And there were kind of three generations, I guess, of Latvian Russians, three waves. The first one was the Russians who settled in Latvia during the Middle Ages, and they became mostly part of Latvian society. They were considered Latvians. Even at the advent of Latvian nationalism, they were still considered to be Latvians, and they were not targeted really by Latvian nationalists. And then there was the second wave, which Russians fleeing after the Russian Civil War, some of them came to Latvia, and also these were also mostly considered Latvians by Latvian nationalists. But then there was the third wave, and this was after the Soviet Union annexed Latvia. A lot of Russians settled into Latvia. These were not as widely accepted by by Latvians, and this ultimately, after Latvia became independent, many Latvian Russians were not granted Latvian citizenship, and they were given an alien passport, which was purple, and actually, it's on the flag. Purple replaces maroon on the Latvian flag for the Latvian Russians. And also, this was, I think, the only example I could find. I didn't look too extensively because I wanted to go into depth about the various diaspora groups to which the flags belong. But I think this is the only flag I know which doesn't diaspora flag I know of which doesn't really have any connection to the country of origin. And this was also the only image I could find of it, but that's better than I guess it being displayed in some random person's house. I mean, this was at a protest. I found this on FOTW, so pretty reliable. Um, yeah, but that was the only image I could find of it actually being used. And you might think that this is just a discoloration of the Latvian flag, and this is what the FOTW editor who added this also thought. But it is not. It is yeah, that is the actual color of the Latvian Russian flag, as you can see. Now, the last thing I have to talk about, as you know, the internet has led to the rise of vexillology, previously a very obscure interest. Now, People have discovered vexillology, become vexillologists, mainly through the internet, and as a result of this, people have begun creating custom flags. And a lot of these are diaspora flags. And if you go onto communities such as r/vexillology on Reddit, pretty simply, you'll find quite a few custom flags, and many of these, as I said, will be diaspora flags. So I actually found a few examples, such as people created Jewish diaspora flags, a flag of Ukrainians in Brazil, Lebanese in Brazil, and Kurds in Europe. And like those can be found here. These were I found these all on r/vexillology, just searching up diaspora. In summary, diaspora flags, they are commonly used by diaspora groups, and there are also a lot of new unofficial, less widely used flags, diaspora flags being created in the modern day.
Great, interesting. As the Acadian flag, you see, I'm just seeing the only other flag in the world that's got pink in it, flag of the Newfies.
Oh yeah,
What do you know about that?
Um, I'm I do believe that I believe that the green is meant to represent the Irish diaspora population in Newfoundland, the white the Scottish, and the pink the English. I'm not entirely sure how true that is, but I I think I heard that, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to symbolize, but I could be completely wrong. I think you should probably just I would recommend I would recommend searching that up and verifying it. Yeah.
Regarding the designs of diaspora flags, there is the question about the existence of them. What exactly drives people to create a flag for their specific diaspora instead of just their country? Like, for example, create an Iraqi Turkmen flag instead of just flying the flag of Turkey and Iraq. And then if it's the emergence of a new nationalism, what do you think comes first? The nationalism inspires a flag, or does a NAVA flag design help foster nationalistic feelings?
All right. Good question. So, um, I think for the first one, it's to symbolize the distinctiveness, like as from the Acadian example, the fact that they are both French and Acadian, so both connected to the country of origin and distinct, probably alongside because um the flag the flag is used to represent the distinctiveness, so I think the distinctiveness and the flag kind of connect in that way. Yeah.
Someone mentioned earlier that the Newfoundland tricolor is the only flag in the world with a substantial amount of pink in it. That's incorrect, actually. Just that's what someone said, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, yeah. So one of the at least one flag of which I'm aware that has another substantial amount of pink in it is the Brazilian state of Espírito Santo.
We also have all the Vietnamese groups that have now been forced to come to the United States, and they have flags. So for further research, you might look into that. And then there's something called the Trail of Tears you'll find in the history books that happened right here in the United States.
Yeah, those I think yeah, there are flags for those groups as well. I'm pretty sure, yeah. They are also quite interesting. Yeah.
A couple of things.
Yeah.
One, that Newfoundland diaspora, anecdotal but direct source. That group and some other group, Friday Night Fun, used to be going down to a fence and throwing rocks across at each other and trying to hurt each other. I don't know if the other group has a flag. But my question for you is, do you know of many diaspora groups that kept some flag that they had before they were like forced out? So the example I'm thinking of is my own diaspora, the Vietnamese one, that kept the Southern Vietnamese flag that was usurped by Trump supporters. And when I tried to propose a design, my dad said, if you value your life, you keep that to yourself, because people are still willing to die for that old flag. And I believe, I just didn't think about it. But do you know of many diasporas that kept an old flag and made it their own rather than design a new flag?
Yeah, I think a lot of displaced populations still use the flag of the country of origin. Sometimes they do create another flag alongside it, but I think actually, usually they are used together anyway. Trying to think of an example. I guess I could say for some sub-diaspora groups, at least I can give a direct example. The Volga Germans who emigrated or were forced, or I think that, well, emigrated to the Americas and were forcibly displaced to Kazakhstan and Siberia. I think they, I'm not entirely sure, but I would imagine that they kept the Volga German. I don't think the Volga German flag actually existed during the immigration to the Americas, but during I mean, I think the large Volga German community still in Kazakhstan, I think probably still uses the Volga German flag, or they might just use the German flag in the first place. So yeah.
So I have a direct case for that. So in Seattle, the Vietnamese community have used the South Vietnam flag as, you know, their diaspora group. And they've gotten like council recognition from it. So one of my board members has like done work for that.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, watch what happens in Ireland. When Ireland was partitioned in 1921, Northern Ireland's part of the UK. I can guarantee there are a number of towns and communities, they are flying the Irish flag. If the opposite happens, and then there's a vote that makes basically a merger between the North and the South, you're going to see a lot of Union Jacks cropping up where that group is now alienated and they're fighting back visually. So that's something that's happening right now where they're sort of conveying their passion by the use of flags.
Yeah, I think the Irish flag is. I mean, yeah, the Irish flag definitely is flown widely in Northern Ireland. So yeah, that is a good example. Yeah.
Okay, so another example would be in California, especially, there are a lot of people who are from the country of Iran, but typically when I'm talking to them, they'll use the term Persian to distinguish between their loyalties. And so they are often using either the picture with the central emblem, so that would be an old flag with a new meaning, or they also have a version of the Iranian flag without any emblem, which they'll often call the neutral version of they'll usually say Persian. So most of the students I encounter, that's the term they'll use for their ethnicity, but they kind of use them interchangeably. But anyway, I think that one's an interesting one because they're using both an old flag and a new flag.
Yeah, I've seen both. So yeah, that's also a good example.
After the Vietnam War, a lot of Vietnamese from South Vietnam immigrated to Texas, particularly Southeast Texas, and they fly the old South Vietnamese flag. I have seen one flying at a convenience store and another at somebody's house, and the Vietnamese in Texas definitely consider the old flag of South Vietnam to be theirs.
So thanks. So it's worth noting that the word diaspora, the word itself, began as a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible to refer to the exile of the Jews when they were expelled in the year 70. So in some sense, the paradigmatic diaspora flag was the flag adopted by the Zionist movement in the late 19th century. And it's interesting that its contemporary usage is that it's both the flag of the State of Israel and it's the flag of Jews living outside the state. So it plays that sort of dual and sometimes ambivalent function. And I'm sure that's true for at least some of these other flags where there is a home country and there's also a diaspora community, and the flag plays a dual role in precisely that same way. But you know, the etymology of the word, I think, has to be sort of central to the ultimate.
Two quick comments regarding the Irish. The English that came to Ireland were not escaping the UK. They were brought there for political reasons, and I think the concept of diaspora is running away from something to getting away from an oppressive regime, and I don't think that was the occupants of Northern Ireland's intent. It was more of an invasion. That's another story. But I'm noticing excuse me if I missed it, the Armenian flag, which has the jagged separation there. That's a separatist flag, really is. Is there any relationship in that flag to the genocide of the Armenians?
That's the flag of Artsakh, which was a separatist movement in Azerbaijan. So the Armenian genocide occurred in the Ottoman Empire. Azerbaijan at the time was part of the Soviet Union. I mean, not the Soviet Union, that was later. That was the Russian Empire. There was actually mass displacement, forced displacement of the Artsakh Armenians recently, and I think 2020 something from the separatist movement, or from the separatist region, which is now defunct. But yeah, it was more connected with the post-Soviet Union separatist movement of Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh.